Well, welcome back. Indeed, you are watching Channel 1 News Hour. It's time for us to move into our interactive segment, Your Health. And particularly today, we will be focusing on female genital mutilation. What are some of the campaigns that have been ongoing, and to what extent are we beginning to realize success when it comes to these particular campaigns? And for details of that, joining me now in studio, I have with me Leah Wandera, who is the acting CEO of Hope Foundation for African Women. Thank you, Leah, for joining us this evening. Next to her, we have with us Dr. Grace Mose Okongo, who is a lecturer in sociology and gender development studies, and the at the Kenyatta University, and also the founder of Hope Foundation for African Women. Thank you, ladies, for joining us this evening.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us.
All right, let's begin with, this is a conversation that we have every other time, female genital mutilation.
Yes.
What are the statistics like today as we speak?
Thank you for having us, and we are grateful for this opportunity. I want to say that in Kenya, the statistics nationally look like the preference rate is 21%. But when you look at the...
Just look at me. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I look at you.
Yes.
Yes. Nationally, the preference rate is 21%. But we do have certain communities which have such a high rate of circumcision. For example, when you talk about the Kisses, the circumcision rate is at 84.4%. When you look at the Kuria, it is in the higher 84, 85, almost up to 90, depending on what side of the Kuria land you are talking about. The Maasai have reduced, but they are currently at 70%. So, and then we have communities like the Meru and the Embu who are in the range of 35 to 45%. And then we have the Kikuyus who are so low, like 1 to 5%. So it really depends on which community you are talking about. But when you look at Africa as a whole,
yes,
you will find that overall there are certain countries which have even a higher rate than Kenya. For example, Sierra Leone has in the 90s, and they continue to support the practice to continue. Somali, the same thing. So we do have, when we look at overall in Africa, we have 28 countries practicing FGM. So that is very unfortunate, considering the effects which come from FGM. Yes.
But if we look at, our situation here in Kenya, the level of awareness, would you say that, the number of FGM cases, the prevalence rate has gone down?
Yes. The prevalence rate is going down, except in those communities which are, we call them hot pockets, where the preference rate continues to be high, and also we find that in those communities, strategies have been continuously improved to keep the practice going. In other words, the practice has gone underground. A very good example is among the Kuria community and among the Kisi community. Yes.
Leah, based on what she's saying, would you say, when she says they've gone underground, does it mean that people are just doing it, but in secret? So you can't really say that there is a reduction in itself?
Clearly, we can't say that there is a reduction until we wait for another survey to be done, because the previous survey that was done was in 2014. So we are waiting for the current one, hoping that with the level of awareness that we have done, there will be reduction. But when we say that it has gone to secrecy, I'll give you an example. Previously, they used to have celebration. Like in Kisi community, people will publicly celebrate about this. But nowadays, they will never celebrate. But the girl will still be cut. So like it is done in secrecy. Yes.
So in terms of, the interventions that have been done over time, what would you say perhaps has been, the success rate?
Okay. Like currently what I can refer to as a success rate is when we have men and we have some leaders in the community, like they come out publicly and urge the fellow community members to stop that. After they have maybe gone through a training or they've been told they know about the FGM practice itself. So when they come out and denounce like, okay, I'm not going to do this. And then with the number of safe houses that are being built and being established by not only our organization but other institutions, it shows that the level of awareness is increasing, and at least we are trying to reduce it. Yes.
All right. Of course, FGM has been banned in our country.
Yes.
But are we seeing, people taking responsibility for those who continue, practice it illegally? Are we seeing people being taken to court, people being jailed because of practicing FGM?
In the places where we have pockets of the hotspot pockets, the communities which practice it on a very high level. One of the challenges is that the implementation process of the law is very low, partly because these are relatives doing FGM. So it's very difficult for relatives to go and accuse another relative.
Yes.
So they kind of hide each other and protect each other. You might have a sub-chief or a chief who supports FGM. How will you expect such a person to step up and take somebody to court? So the rate of prosecution is there, but it's very minimum. And that is a challenge we have.
Then to add something on what Dr. Grace is saying, the law is there. But when you go to the ground, people are not aware of this law. The only few people that are aware of this law, either they neglect or they ignore the law. But the majority of the people, it's true that they are not aware of the law of anti-FGM that was established in Kenya in 2011.
And actually, to add on that point, you will find that the level of civic education around that law is quite low. Actually, it's non-existent. You don't find people who go into the grassroots. You might find people in around towns being aware of the practice, being aware of the law, but only minimally. People just know there is Anti-FGM Act, there is the Children's Act, but what is contained in the Act is not well established and well known.
So how do we change this? How do we, give out the communication that can be felt at the grassroots?
I think one of the things that we as an organization have started noticing and doing is to start educating the people on the grassroots, not holding pig conversations in boardrooms in Nairobi, in pig towns, and not going to the grassroots has been a very major disservice to the women and the communities. What we are doing is, and I think what will solve this problem, is bringing all the stakeholders together, educating them. We have now started educating the men especially, because most of the time you hear it is the women who are doing this practice. So that now lifts the burden from the men. But when we start talking to the men, and men realizing what this really is all about, they stand up and they say no. Educating the sub-chiefs, chiefs, Nyumba Kumi, and all the local governance, they need to be aware, and we have started doing that, educating the policemen. Because if they are not aware of the dangers of FGM, they are never going to hold anybody accountable. And when we talk about holding to account all the stakeholders, we really mean everybody. The children themselves need to know what FGM is all about, because what has brought it this far is the secrecy under which it is hidden. So when we talk to the children, to the teachers, to the parents, and then the leaders, that will end FGM. But now it needs to be done aggressively, consistently, and widely to cover the regions where we call the hotspots.
So Leah, how do you change a culture? Because this has been a cultural practice. It has been there for, as long as these communities can remember. And today you're telling them, this is bad. I mean, how are you changing that, and what alternative are you offering?
Great. One thing that we need to acknowledge is that changing a culture is not easy, and it's not simple. But with dialogue, like sitting down and then talking about it, letting the people themselves be able to ask the question, why are we cutting? What is the reason behind cutting? And what are the benefits of cutting? Then the people themselves reason out, should we continue with this cutting? Because you can't wake up one day and you go tell a person, stop that. He won't stop. They will look at you and probably stone you. But when you go through a dialogue and a conversation with them, letting them understand the practice itself better, it becomes so easier for them to change their mindset, because it starts with a mindset. Because it's true that culture change, yeah, right? Right now we are putting on the clothes that our ancestral grandparents were not putting on. So we can change it, but when we give it time, and it takes time and patience with some of these people that we go to the ground to meet. Yes.
What is the reception, when you go to the ground and start, talking about you need to stop FGM?
One of the things that we've done, which is different from the organizations that have been there before us, is to use a methodology called popular education. This is a critical consciousness raising kind of approach, which we got in South America, Chile, to be very specific. The popular education methodology, which was developed by Paul Freire, is very engaging to the community. Rather than us going to tell the people this is bad, we want them to discover by themselves through the dialogues that we have them, so that we don't go in knowing everything and having answers to the questions, but we go in with the knowledge that people know a lot, and we begin with what people know and do. When you go down to the ground and tell a woman you are suffering, who knows the suffering better than that woman who has gone through this? And because of these dialogues, we are able to have conversations with survivors. And so when we have dialogues with the men, the survivors are there because of the confidence we have given them, the building of capacity that we have done. These women are able to come and say, look here, this is what is going on in our community. And because women and men in the community are taking lead, that's how we are changing the culture. And we are not even saying, let's do away with the good part of the culture. We are saying, let's discover what's good and what has been passed by time so that we can discuss it, discard it for the welfare of these communities.
So let's talk about, the dangers,
Yes.
the short-term and the long-term effects of FGM. What are they?
Go ahead.
Leah?
Okay. So like when we talk of effects of FGM, we have what we call the short-term or immediate effect. When this girl is cut, what does she go through? There is what we call shock. When you are prepared, the survivors will tell you, and will tell you that when you are prepared for the cut, you are pampered. You are told you'll be beautiful, all those good things. You think that this is something good, something that is not painful. But immediately you go through the practice, there is that shock. There is that very pain, that goes through your mind. And then with this pain, it causes some psychological trauma, some depression for this girl, a scar that will never heal in her mind. So each and every time she even sees something that can shock her, she gets so much depressed. And then there could be too much bleeding for the girl. And too much bleeding can cause it. So some of the short-term effects, and then we can have of long-term effects. Probably Dr. can explain them better. Of when it is now she has grown, she has gone through her childhood, now she's getting into adulthood, and especially when she's married, like now a woman, what does she go through during her birth period?
You will find that in the immediate circumstances of the cut, the style of holding the child down, sometimes which can be done by several women, dislocates a child's legs. And when that happens, the child may be healed, may continue with her life, and that effect will be felt when she's giving birth. So you will be finding women who are walking and complaining about pain in the legs, but they never, most of the time, connect it to that which happened to them when they are young. But even so, because of the cut, the muscles kind of stretch. I mean, they become tough. They don't stretch, so that when the woman is giving birth, second labor, stage labor delays. And that has a very strong impact on a woman who is delivering. In fact, the World Health Organization says that a woman who has been cut has 3 chances of dying than the woman who is giving birth naturally. So that's really a danger right there. But then also because the muscles don't stretch the way they are supposed to stretch, you will find that the child pushes through forcefully. And so what happens, you will hear of women who have fistula. Our Margaret Kenyatta, the wife of the president, always talks about fistula repair. And if you look at the places where this happens, you will find that there are mostly places where FGM is happening. So you will find that these women are really stigmatized. They can't walk freely in public. They can't do anything in public. There's such a stigma. And it's really a sad story. But then the people don't even connect between what happened during circumcision and the life this woman is going through right now. And then you will also find, because of the delayed labor, there are children who get to be born as stillbirths. And there are children also who get born with cerebral palsy. And there are others who have epilepsy. All these things, we don't make them a connection to FGM. But in some cases, that may be the situation. I'm not saying that every child who is born with those conditions is because of FGM, but I'm saying
just
that
saying
it
increases the risks.
It contributes to that. But there are also sad stories like keloid development. Keloid is a kind of scar, a very tough scar which develops in the private parts of a woman who has been cut. It's like when you are doing a cut on your ear or you are developing earring, you will find that something can swell. And you keep on cutting it and it keeps on coming back. That can happen very easily when the woman has undergone cut. And there are cysts, things which a woman will never tell you. You just hear of a man going out to look for other women, and there is a woman here who has a problem and nobody knows about it because this is such a private part of a person. But one of the things that we have been having conversations about is about the sexual angle to FGM. When a woman is cut, later on in life, it doesn't enjoy that pleasure, sexual pleasure as a man. So you will find that in those communities, intimacy is simply ruined when you are talking about FGM and the sexuality. And these are some of the conversations we are able to have with the men, because the men complain, our women are like this, our women don't
so you begin to make them understand.
So we bring survivors to explain what this means to them. So it's a topic.
It's a very sensitive thing. I can even feel, you know. But now just looking at, you know, the stigma that also comes around, you know, the communities themselves. How do you tackle that? Because there's always the perception that once, you know, you undergo the cut, that's when you're ready for marriage. So now when you say, you know, don't go through this, how does the community treat you, and how is it that you're empowering the community, you know, to look at it differently?
Okay. When you are born in a Kisii community as a girl and you are not cut, you are going to face that stigma. By the names that they call you, you are not allowed to associate with the girls that have been cut, so you feel like you are left out. And you'll find that some of these girls, they're not doing it willingly, but they're doing it for the sake of them being called like good wives, for the sake of them being married. We can say probably that FGM is done on a girl for a man, because you are cut to be prepared to be a good wife. But now when we are having these discussions, when we are having these dialogues, when we are having these trainings, we make sure that we talk to these people and show them a better way of communicating to these girls, showing that they are embraced. Even just the parents from the home, the fathers, the friends, the brothers, being able to encourage these girls that you are beautiful, because when God created us, says that we are all beautiful. So you are beautiful the way you are, and you can get married without being cut. You will be educated without being cut. Yes.
All right. I'm told we're running out of time, but you know, in terms of some of the myths and misconceptions, what is it that you'd want perhaps, you know, our viewers to learn out of, you know, this particular discussion we're having today?
Okay, this discussion today was specifically based on a campaign on FGM, not my religion. You know, it is Easter period, and we know how important Easter period is for the Christians. And some of the myth that is associated with FGM is that FGM is a religion. FGM is a spiritual practice. Why? Because when we look at the Bible, we see God telling Abraham, go ahead and circumcise what? Your son Isaac. And any male in your household. And even in the New Testament, Jesus is being circumcised on the 8th day after he was born, right? We see these teachings. So people misconceive, like, since we were told to circumcise, it is okay to cut a girl. Let's differentiate between male circumcision and female mutilation. Female cut is not circumcision, because circumcision is removal of the foreskin. But when we are talking of a girl, it is cutting, simply mutilating.
It is not removal.
Yes, yes. Right. So FGM is not a religious practice, and it should not be done on the, like, it is our religion. No, it is not a religious practice. It is not biblically supported. So as Christians, it is anti-Christianity.
What about the cultural bit of it? How do you, just before you, the cultural bit of it, how do you address it, you know, in your campaign? Because you're just saying it is not a religion, yet it is practiced culturally.
Yes, so
not religiously.
Exactly. Some people will say, like, it is our culture, but we ask them, where is the origin? How did it start? What is the root cause of that? So if you try to study the root cause, and in these discussions, they find out that men sat somewhere in a corner and said, let's cut these ladies. Why? To maybe tame them, to reduce their libido. But trust me, even if you look at our statistics of teenage pregnancy, the girls are being cut. But you'll be surprised that Nyamira is number 5 out of 47 counties in the rate of teenage pregnancy. Now, we can't really say that it's a culture, yet if it is not bringing the benefits that were intended for that culture. So we can have other alternative cultures or rite of passage for this girl other than having it as a culture.
Daktari?
Yes. One of the myths that I wanted to bring out, and which we bring out in our training, is making a very strong link between the myth that it makes good wives and good mothers. That's a myth. How many women do we have in the world who have not gone through circumcision? I mean, it's not even circumcision now. We know that it's a mutilation. How many in the world go through, who don't go through the cut, but who are good mothers and wives? So we are trying to remove all these myths, including that particular one, but not only removing it, but also bringing out the idea that there is structural gender inequalities behind it. The idea that men don't even want to marry these women because they want a woman who is submission. And we unveil what respect means. When you say, I want a woman who is submissive, who is respectful, we dig through to find out what is this that is being called respect. Then we are able to discover that it is that woman who, even if you beat her, she will never raise her mouth, she will never advocate for herself, she will just suffer. And that is what is called submission. And that is what is called a good mother and wife. A woman who can literally suffer and survive without questioning the wrongs in our life. So when we bring out all these issues and reveal to the people that there's a lot of injustice that is going on here, and when you have a woman who is trampled upon, that woman can never make a good home. A woman who has a voice is the woman who builds the family. A woman who goes to school, who builds herself, is the woman who makes a family. So we bring it out
I
so
can already
clearly.
see you in the field. All right, thank you, Dr. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we really appreciate you finding time to join us this evening and, of course, shed light on what you're doing to try and, expose people to the realities vis-a-vis the myths about female genital mutilation. Well, of course, we've been talking to Dr. Grace Mose-Okongo, who is a lecturer at Kenyatta University in the Sociology, Gender and Development Studies Department, as well as the founder of Hope Foundation for African Women, as well as Leah Wandera, who is the acting CEO of Hope Foundation for African Women, an organization that is currently pushing for a campaign against female genital mutilation. This is where we put a cap on your health, but up next is business news, so stay tuned.